Everyone. And Mazel Tov to Jaden and Ben and to your families. Really seeing you celebrate there is the uplift that we need and gives us hope for the future. Shabbat should bring uplift and Shabbat should restore us, especially after such a heavy week as we've had. So I offer these words too with the hope that they can restore some of our strength. Holocaust survivor and human rights activist Elie Wiesel instructs us, I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Parashat Naso begins with the words, Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, Naso et Rosh b'nei Gershon, gam hem levet avotam lemishpechotam. The Eternal One spoke to Moses saying, Naso et Rosh. This expression is understood to mean take a census, take a counting of the Gershonites, according to their places of origin and according to their familial ancestry. The sub-tribe of Levites was responsible for the sacred duty of carrying the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary, which we took with us throughout the 40 years of wandering the wilderness. But this expression, Naso et Rosh, must mean more. Taking a census, sure. Counting the people, sure. Gather statistics. But that is never enough to understand a people. Counting them is never enough to understand the experiences of a people, to understand the strengths of a people, to understand the vulnerabilities of a people. What could researching the numbers possibly have to do with fulfilling the faithful acts that were assigned to the Gershonites? There must be more to it. Naso et Rosh. Literally, it means lift up the head so that they can be counted. Naso et Rosh, lift up the head of the descendants of Gershon. What happens when we lift up our heads? Chin up, shoulders square and strong, spine straightens, we stand taller, ready to walk into the world. And the neck is extended in dignity. In the Hebrew Bible, the neck is a place of beauty and a place of dignity. The Gershonites were much more than statistics in a census, of course. They were human beings called to a sacred purpose, and their raised heads help them to see the dignity within themselves and to show it outwardly for others watching. By lifting their heads, they showed readiness and enthusiasm for the sacred task they were born to fulfill. Carrying the weight of the Mishkan on their shoulders was their sacred inheritance, and they stood tall, ready to rise to the occasion with the dignity of their ancestors. The Jewish people knows this dignity. We are inheritors of a strong and proud and ancient people. As Reb Menachem Nachum of Chernobyl once taught, let the Israelites hold their heads high in pride as they contemplate who their ancestors were. Because we know what it feels like to walk through the world with dignity, because we know what it feels like to have that dignity threatened or denied, we can be uniquely aware of the dignity of other peoples and uniquely protective of the dignities of other peoples. Dr. Donna Hicks, former director of the Program on International Conflict Analysis at Harvard, teaches that the heart of every conflict, no matter how big or how small, at the heart of every conflict between human beings, there is what she calls the dignity violator. And until we address matters of indignity and restore the dignity that has been denied, the conflict can never be fully restored. What else about the neck? It is a place of vulnerability. In fact, the most vulnerable spot on the human body, the most exposed, the most at risk. Our very lives depend on the neck. When an animal is brought for sacrifice in the ancient temple, it would be placed on the altar with its neck extended. Isaac was bound on the altar of Mount Moriah, but God stayed the knife in his father's hand. With that most dramatic story of our patriarchs, we learn that God on high rejects human sacrifice, which had been so rampant among the idolaters of the land of Israel. The God of Israel commands no more sacrifices of the innocent ones. Rather, bacharta b'chayim, choose life, God demands, lema'an tichyeh, in order that you and your descendants might really live. George Floyd was sacrificed. His neck was exposed to the ugliest and most hateful and most violent kind of idolatry. His life had meaning, and now his death is given meaning too. Rabbi Jason Rosenberg, who served Holy Blossom Temple for 7 years as our assistant rabbi and now leads his own congregation in Tampa, Florida, spoke last week at an interfaith prayer vigil in memory of George Floyd. And he taught that the neck can be a place of love. The neck can be a place of reconciliation and even a place of peace. For Esau fell on his brother Jacob's neck and cried when the two were reunited after years of enmity. And Joseph holds his brother Benjamin, weeps upon his neck, and the two are finally together again after years of separation. Necks are a place that can catch the falling tears of love. They can also be, Rabbi Rosenberg teaches, a place of promise and commitment. As it is written in the book of Proverbs, let not kindness and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck. Write them upon the table of thy heart. But necks can also be the resting place of the knee, of those who hold us down and choke the life from our beating heart. God said to Esau, you shall break the yoke from your neck and be free. And the prophet Isaiah cried out, loosen the bonds from your neck, O captive one. God made the Jewish people a stiff-necked people. For better and for worse, we are a stiff-necked people. Perhaps this was by design so that we could lift up our heads and hold so much on our shoulders as the Gershonites did. By our necks, we bear the weight of the mitzvot. By our necks, we are fortified to pursue justice. By our necks, we carry the weight of this weary world. When we take the Torah from the ark and we hold the weight of it in our arms, we sing, Su'u sha'arim roshechem, v'hi nas'u pitchei olam. Lift up your heads, O gates. Lift them up, you ancient doors, so that the God of glory may enter. Last night, we heard words of praise, the words of the opening of gates and the lifting of heads, the opening of doors so that God might enter. The Reverend Dr. Anthony Bailey was our guest. He spoke from his congregation in Ottawa. He spoke just after addressing the nation on Parliament Hill. Even the Prime Minister there was there to hear his words. and another person who lifts up her head in dignity to see the truth and to speak the truth, to fill her throat even with the hard truths that people are not yet necessarily ready to hear, is our own congregant, Tema Smith. Many know her as our former director of community engagement, and she continues on now being published very often, a leading voice in North America, speaking about racism, about Judaism, about the experiences of Jews of color. And she will be our guest today, immediately following the service. All are welcome to join Tema for Kiddush and conversation. And we will listen, and we will hear, and we will learn from her about the experience of Jews of color. And on Monday evening at 8 o'clock, there is a community-wide, Toronto-wide event hosted by the Toronto Board of Rabbis and the Miles Nadell JCC, where 4 members of the Jewish community will speak also about what we must learn at this time.